Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Tonight, we got a special show for you tonight, a bit more of a variety type of show, in that we're going to be addressing a variety of different topics, all surrounding the same theme. We're not going to be discussing the same thing for the entirety, but we got a nice smorgasbord buffet of like different articles, little things that just add up to a larger story going on. Um, yeah, you see that with the Jake Meador. I wasn't sure whether it was Meador or Meador until AD Robles did his video and pronounced it. I see, someone's already familiar with AD Robles' content tonight. But yeah, that's generally the trend of what's going on. Then we got Owen Strachan. We're going to talk about Owen Strachan and the Christianity or compromise today, as I like to call it. And we have one other article that I should probably have read beforehand, but I'm just trying to compile things into a nice rundown for tonight. But and then I don't know how familiar you are with this conversation, Anthony. You have any familiarity with what we're about to discuss?
For the most part, I'm going to fly in a little blind. I mean, obviously, you mentioned Christianity Today, which is just a continuous dumpster fire of content, and obviously familiar with the Oliver Anthony situation. So,
Yeah, the Oliver Anthony situation might actually be the best launching point, because that story is just so revealing to like the priorities of evangelicals, and they want to language and tone police him while he is speaking out about the larger laments of American culture. And it's like, you're going to speak so strongly against this guy, and then where are you on any given Sunday on other topics that are very pressing? Where, it's sort of we got to attack him because he's popular and having fun. And I do have a good meme about that we'll share when we do a little bit of meme review. We got a small segment of meme review going on today. These are memes that I made early in the week, so I'm going to abstain myself, and Anthony in the chat can do the meme review for me. But otherwise, since you're here, don't forget to like the stream to help with those magical algorithms, and also subscribe if you are new. So we're going to do some news gathering. Let me get my tabs ready. I think I want to start off with the Owen Strachan story, actually. And this is Owen Strachan, who's become very renowned for opposing uh, I'd say opposing critical race theory, even though he was very late to oppose critical race theory. So he's kind of famous because he was part of Big Eva. If you look, he has a page over at the Gospel Coalition, or used to, and then he switched sides to become, not woke. So he was woke, then he went not woke. I can't remember what year. I think he was woke in 2018 and then not woke in 2019 or something like that. Close enough, but anyway, he went woke and now he's not woke, and now he's reverting back to wokeness. And you see that in his rants against Christian nationalism. And it is just very telling that some evangelicals just suck on politics. And it shows. This is what Christian nationalism debates kind of showing, is that some people really don't understand politics. And this is where I want to start off, and that is once I start the share screen. So Owen Strachan announces Christians who believe replacement theory is real. And this is based on a tweet by Owen Strachan that got a lot of attention. Didn't quite get ratioed, I don't think, but he went on a blocking spree for anyone who really tried to criticize him. So for those who don't know, like, replacement theory is a political tool in which mass immigration is used to replace or dilute the native population to achieve desired political outcomes. This has been the driving force of European politics.
it should also be noted that when you move a massive block of people, you create a more compliant society. Again, you can read your Bible and you'll see that the Assyrians and the Babylonians, when they did this to the conquered peoples, they would take them and then move them somewhere else. And of course, this is the tool that God would use to exile the Israelites. And that is not quite replacement theory, but pretty much you're taking one group of people, moving them somewhere else, breaking them from their homeland. You're taking away their culture, and those people become compliant and
Well,
submissive to the
the
regime.
Assyrians were trying to dilute different areas
Yes,
to pacify rebellion.
exactly.
So
And that's what they want to do to the West, is to
in
pacify
Europe,
rebellion.
they destroyed in right-wing politics in entire countries, especially in Western Europe. Like, you don't really have a right wing in France. Marine Le Pen is still like California. She's that far left still. She just might not hate her country as much. The UK doesn't have right wing politics at all. They have, 4 left wing parties.
I mean,
And
they
then
have the
Canada
most.
has like 5 left wing parties.
I
There's a
mean,
reason why Trudeau's still there and he can't get not elected, is because, the only left wing party that's really going to challenge Trudeau can't get elected. They can't, they can't win elections. So that's the case in Canada. Uh, you do see a resurgence in areas like, Spain, I think, is having a resurgence, and maybe Portugal as well. Italy, supposedly, I've heard mixed things from their prime minister, but entire and then the biggest country that you hear kind of rejecting replacement theory is Hungary, which they've kind of gone very public in their opposition to flooding Europe with Syrian refugees.
and they're
And
also
it's
the most natalist country, perhaps in the world, from a policy standpoint.
as in pro family.
Pro family or natal being baby making.
It's very interesting because, and we're going to talk about this because I'm going to talk about that later, just the idea of Hungary and why it's a good example of Christian nationalism, especially as it relates to Christianity outstretching its influence in a country that it doesn't really deserve to be super influential in, statistically speaking. And that should give hope for, the Americans who are dooming about um, post-Christian society. Like, Hungary is in a post-Christian society, and the Christians are winning there. So that's your red pill for the day, or maybe white pill if you want to call it that. So replacement theory is real. It's not necessarily about, what demographic you import. I mean, for the United States context, naturalized citizens vote Democrat in pretty much every ethnicity, except, few exceptions. We're going to talk about the Cubans. They're an exception. I want to say Koreans are also an exception. Like, Koreans are like very conservative compared to, say, Chinese in the United States. You know anything about that? And maybe Venezuelans, or Venezuelans also conservative?
I mean, I
A
know
lot of people say they are, but
Koreans might be simply because of like an outstretched Christian influence in Korea, so that
yes.
might make sense. I mean, Chinese are more atheistic over there, so when they come to America, they're more or less bringing their
I know I've
worldview
seen the
with them.
data on like which of these are more conservative, and it's like, yeah, the Chinese immigrants are generally more far left, and I believe the Korean ones are actually a lot more conservative, which again is the Christian influence of Korean culture. Which, again, I'm not. I want to say I read something about Korean culture really primarily exists because of Christianity, because they were conquered by Japan, and Japan wanted to eradicate the Korean culture, and Christianity and the Bible were instrumental in preserving Korean culture. So Christian nationalism for the win, right?
And that's
Um,
like a 30, well, it's like 30, 30, 30 as far as Korea, North or South Korea's religious breakdown. Like 30% might, a third identify as Christian, a third Buddhist, a third are like atheists or non religious. So that's kind of a little breakdown on.
I mean, I hate to see what's going on in South Korea these days. I mean, they're starting to make artwork that's acclaimed, I guess, but they're also getting super effeminate, and I think it's the Japanese influence. Um, but yeah, just the bad music and a lot of other stuff going on over there. They're getting a little blue pilled politically, but in Europe, we see clearly that, hey, it doesn't really matter where the immigrants are coming from: Africa, Syria, Middle East, Ukraine, even. It doesn't really matter what color skin they are. It's not exactly good for these countries, and it eliminates right-wing politics and allows left-wing politics to just run rampant. And you see that in Western Europe. You see that a little bit in Canada. I mean, Canada is just kind of like, very atheistic. And then you see that in like areas like Quebec, French Canadian. But otherwise, that's the game plan for the United States as well. You saw that with California, Reagan amnesty. California used to be a Republican stronghold. New York used to be a Republican stronghold. Texas was not. If you remember, wasn't LBJ from Texas?
Yeah, he was.
So you rewind the clock a bit. New York was a Republican stronghold, and then so was California. Reagan amnesty kind of flipped California blue, and now it's pretty much impenetrable because not only is California blue, but they rigged the game to keep it blue. They got jungle primaries, which again helps rig the game to keep it blue, and a bunch of other things. But surprisingly, it's not super difficult to get a recall election in California compared to other states. But even still, it's just impenetrable. And New York City is probably one of the chief reasons. Like New York again used to be a Republican stronghold. This would have been a state that would have went Nixon in 1960, I believe. But then things change. So a lot of and replacement theory is more so part of the California story than it is New York story. But you never underestimate the influence of New York City, which is basically a state inside of a state. So the fact that Owen Strachan, he doesn't just denounce Christians for believing it's real. He says, this is the tweet. Sadly, looks like some prominent conservatives have bought into a version of the Great Replacement theory. They fear the replacement of whites or Anglo-Saxon people and culture. This mirrors fears sown among other ethnicities, and it's both very dangerous and pernicious. So it's dangerous and pernicious to kind of acknowledge this is political science 101. Demography is destiny, right?
Well, the other thing is, I mean, I know we talked about this with other nations, with Britain, how there's this narrative that, oh, all these immigrants coming over are Christians, so they would actually help Christianize America. So you have
this has been argued several times by Big Eva.
Yes, I did an article in April on the Gospel Coalition celebrating Britain's replacement. And this was the Fellowship of Independent Evangelical Churches, which is probably the Big Eva across the pond. And they made the same argument that, hey, these people are disproportionately Christian, so that means they're going to Christianize Britain, right? And the answer is, well, what type of Christian are they? Again, because I think in Britain the only a lot more of the charismatic sects are growing in Britain. So that but I don't know what that entails, whether it just means like a Calvary Chapel type or a Bethel type.
I'm pretty sure it's not Calvary Chapel.
And I imagine it might lean a little bit more towards Bethel or Word of Faith or something along that line.
Yeah, I mean, in the American context, at least, yeah, I mean, as Charles points out in the chat, it's Roman Catholicism, but it's not just Roman Catholicism. It's Roman Catholicism pretty much intermixed with liberation theology. I mean, Pope Francis is a Marxist, right? Well, he came from Argentina. Argentina, South American state, a very friendly to the Axis powers South American state, if you want to go back in history. And a lot of Marxist revolutions happening in South America, and you see that influence in the church as well. So, you see, you definitely don't want theologically liberal immigrants to because they're not going to add the religiosity that you're going to look for in your, society. They're not going to add to that. They're going to dilute that.
And
Uh,
the other thing is when they get assimilated or their children get assimilated, they're going to get assimilated in the public school system. So they're getting that version of history, that version of what America or what Britain or whatever country they're going to is. So that means they're getting this country was racist from day one. They're getting indoctrinated with critical race theory as their concept of what America is. Because
but
they don't have any roots here, so the government can pretty much force feed them the narrative.
And then Kat asks, "Isn't this a conspiracy theory anyway?" And yeah, that's a joking question. But this is the funny thing, is that this replacement theory is both denied in its existence and then celebrated by the left. So
That is the classic liberal doublespeak. They will argue opposite sides of the same argument.
yeah, exactly. It's not happening, but it's good that it is. It kind of actually reminds me of like the Holocaust deniers. They say that they're not just questioning the 6 million thing; they're just denying that it happened. And it's like they both think that it didn't happen and then wish that it did, and you kind of wish they'd pick a side on it. But that's kind of what they're doing here. They're denying that it happens, and then they're celebrating that it did. So back to the whole Owen Strachan thing. This is just part of his woke revert. And this is Political Science 101, the demography is destiny. And the Democrats are totally aware and self-aware that replacement theory is a tool to eliminate Republicans from being competitive nationally because they are well aware that naturalized citizens tend to vote Democrat, and ethnic minority voting blocks break in their favor with rare exceptions, such as Cubans and possibly Koreans. Uh, Again, Owen Strachan is perhaps blind to the reality of politics, but if he's blind, then he shouldn't be leading because that's the blind leading the blind. So that is our stop with the Owen Strachan thing. Anything else you want to say about the Owen Strachan story that I wrote late last night?
No, I mean we already touched on liberal doublespeak, and again the prevailing evangelical narrative that immigration is importing Christians and will actually make America a more culturally Christian place. Again, this has not been proven true in California. It's not really being proven true anywhere else.
So the next area that I want to talk about is probably the Oliver Anthony story. So Oliver Anthony wrote Rich Men North of Richmond. And I've already done one video on this, and I did a video in defense of his song and admiration of his song. Even it might even win Song of the Year if we do that, if it gets nominated, because it's a much better song than Try That in a Small Town. And Jason Aldean backed down on his music video. So just saying. But this song has erupted a lot of debate about what language is and isn't acceptable. And I've already done that video, and that video talked about how there's 5 instances in the Bible that use the same language that Oliver Anthony uses in the song. So there's 5
I mean,
instances, 4 in the Old Testament, 1 in the New Testament.
you didn't even get to Paul saying to chop your entire phallus off if you think circumcision saves you.
No, we didn't get.
So
We didn't
there's
even need to.
that.
We're just going on basic language and what translates. And then since then, I've learned that whether something's considered profanity or not largely is dependent on whether it came from Old English or Old French. And ironically, the pardon my French, is that the Old French was considered more proper because I want to say it was Henry V, or was it Henry IV that was one of the first English monarchs to actually speak English. Like you got to remember that the Normans conquered England and ruled England for hundreds of years. And the Normans spoke French. They were Vikings that conquered, and then they conquered Normandy, and then they conquered England.
Another example of coarse language is Titus 1, chapter 12. One of themselves, a prophet of their own, said, Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons. This testimony is true. So
Yeah, I mean,
I kind of like Paul being very insulting about the false teachers that he's writing to Titus about. And he doesn't address their arguments in chapter 1, but the fact is he opens up calling them fat, evil beast and gluttons. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, that could be considered coarse or whatever. I mean, keep in mind what's considered profanity in the American context isn't even the same as any other English speaking country except maybe Canada. So I'm not I don't think we need to, readdress this entire debate, but you've definitely seen the church ladies and the concern bros come out on top of this story. You saw, and in doing so, the next article that we're going to talk about is not from Evangelical Dark Web. It will be an article on Evangelical Dark Web, but I haven't written it yet, and that is from Compromise Today, and it's called Oliver Anthony's viral hit doesn't love your neighbor. So we're going to talk about this story. Doesn't love its neighbor. So this is written by Hannah Anderson, who should delete her account. She also retweets Michael Ware, who is like an Obama type. So very notorious liberal in the evangelical political space. Richmond, north of Richmond, is disdainful towards people on welfare. Christians shouldn't be. Really. So, what do you think of the headline and subtitle? I have not read this article yet. I figured we'd do it on air.
Obviously, it's taking issue with the whole fat slobs thing, or the fat people.
So,
on food
this is
stamps.
something I tweeted on the Evangelical Dark Web account, is that under Christian nationalism, your taxes won't pay for someone's bags of fudge rolls. Or fudge rounds. See, I'm not fat enough to know how to get it right.
I can actually say, having worked at a grocery store, I mean, people on food stamps don't tend to be the healthiest looking people in the world. So the idea that, our welfare state is going towards obesity, it certainly has some truth to it.
So it is.
So
this is way too long of an article.
So our compassion is actually killing people.
So she's like, when I heard these lyrics, Lord, we got folks in the street ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. Well, God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. That's the lyric she's talking about. And this is about people not getting help from the government, but the people who are getting help from the government are milking it and fat. Like, this isn't as demonizing of people on it's not demonizing of the poor. It's saying that the government helps out the people who are lazy, not the people who are poor. Like, am I missing something here?
That he hates poor people on welfare. That's the part you're missing.
And she wants to talk about herself here. Food stamps are a colloquial name for the federally funded SNAP program that serves nearly 42 million Americans, 13% of the population at risk of food insecurity. It grew out of a Depression-era initiative that brought excess farm commodities and redistributed them among the hungry. So she wants to give a history lesson. And so where does she get back into the point? Because most of this article is like about welfare and the history of it. Okay, we got some good parts here. Add to this okay, so instead of warning against idleness, becoming a busybody, or drifting away from orthodoxy, the context Paul gives in 4 verses prior to 1 Thessalonians 3:6, which she quotes about the one who is unwilling to work shall not eat. So she's referencing that. This interpretation simply condemned those who needed assistance as obviously not working hard enough. If we live in the land of of abundance and opportunity, how can anyone but the lazy go hungry? Add to this language, add to this the language of welfare queens and perpetual suspicion about whether SNAP participants were using their benefits responsibly, whether our purchases were both healthy and frugal, or whether we were buying fudge rounds. And you can begin to understand why I hid in shame. Now,
No,
I mean,
let's just stop there, because the fact is, she's saying that, I mean, I guess whatever story she did that we skipped over, the point was that, there was a stigma attached to using welfare. And I think there should be. The idea is that, it's supposed to help people get back up on their feet, not become a lifestyle. So, yes, there should be a stigma attached to it. I mean, you can't just go George Costanza and fraudulently filling out your unemployment so you can keep cashing in government checks.
it
Like there
worked
should
out
be a
for him for a season.
there should be a stigma attached to taking government assistance, that you're basically milk or suckling at the teat, so you need
Now,
to.
in the UK, their state religion is basically the what is it, NHS,
NHS.
which is their healthcare system. And there is kind of a shame thing going on if you're severely unhealthy, that you're a burden on your neighbor. There's kind of that mentality in the UK, and you saw that rear its ugly head in COVID. The idea that you're going to burden our system that we all have to pay into. So you kind of see it there that again they were sacrificing people to that system, and that's conspiracy theories, I guess, but that's the truth. It's kind of, they have like a shame component to people who abuse their system over there. You don't see that in America with the welfare system, but even the whole welfare queen thing, that grew out of people who are milking the system. Like that didn't grow out of a vacuum. That grew out of a real phenomenon of irresponsible people gaming the system, and they had to do reforms about that. I believe in the 1990s they did, the mid 90s. They did reforms. So uh, the idea, okay, of course, many Christians never think or speak this way. Many are deeply compassionate and make sacrifices to help those facing food insecurity. It is often churches and Christians, after all, who stock food pantries, support food kitchens, and organize backpack programs to combat childhood hunger. It is Christians who show up at church dinners with casseroles in tow. It is Christians who celebrate our deep faith, or our faith, with a meal. I guess it's a reference to communion. When we
Oh,
used SNAP benefits, so I believe the story, if I skimmed it correctly, her husband's a pastor, and they did not make a lot of money in pastorate ministry, so they were on SNAP. So that's kind of the story that I skimmed through. When we used SNAP benefits, I found myself wrestling with these contrasts among my fellow Christians and a conflict with myself. On one hand, I was deeply grateful to God for providing for our family. I love being able to feed my children healthy food, to watch their young bodies grow and develop. At the same time, I felt isolated and abandoned by the very people I worship beside every Sunday. Even worse, I felt like they would judge me if they knew how I kept my family fed. I knew we weren't idle or unorthodox busybodies, and that I had no choice but to access subsidies. But because of the messages I heard, I also couldn't shake the sense that I was doing something wrong. And if I was in the wrong, I felt I had to hide what I was doing. In total, our family used SNAP benefits for 3 years until my husband found a position that compensated him fairly. Uh, by then, I'd worked through my feelings of shame and was actually beginning to take joy in God's provision of food. Though I realized my shame was unfounded, that did not make it any less real or any less harmful to my soul. And while none of us can single handedly dismantle the larger narratives that encouraged it, each of us can make a small adjustment to ensure we are not enforcing those patterns.
I guess two things. One, I mean, did she feel shame because she was actually doing something that was morally wrong? As in, her shame is her conscience telling her she was violating uh, God's ordinances. So that's just one instance of whether she felt guilty because she did feel ashamed, convicted by the Spirit for using the welfare. The second is, church pantries aren't necessarily filled with, I guess, perishable items, like Ho-Hos and Twinkies and,
I thought those are not
well,
perishable, but they come in the bags of just like a fudge round or a
yeah.
bag of chips.
But oftentimes, like, church pantries aren't necessarily stocked with all the junk food. They're more stocked with canned food, maybe cereals and grain stuff. So I mean, the food that a church ministry would give out for like a pantry or is not the same as what you
What they
can
would
just
get
get.
from SNAP benefits
Yeah.
because of the perishable, unperishable nature of certain foods. I think you're right. Uh, and well put at that. So she continues. I understand why so many feel North of Richmond gives voice to their struggle. Perhaps the only thing worse than watching your hard work be exploited and your dreams go up in smoke is the sense that no one notices and no one cares. But protest against wealthy elites and government corruption, no matter how justified, cannot ride on the backs of others who are also suffering. The price of accessing food through SNAP or church food pantry must not be the poor's dignity and self-worth. Instead of trafficking in easy caricatures and political tropes, we must understand the plight of our food insecure neighbors is our plight as well. Put more simply, we must see their God-given humanity and honor it, something I'm certain Anthony himself would affirm. Then why are you saying his hit doesn't love his neighbor if you think that he also affirms this? I don't like this is just you're trying to dunk on him and then raise him up afterwards.
Again, they're not necessarily food insecure neighbors if they're like 300 pounds and obese.
I mean, I think the 300-pound welfare queen is very food secure.
Again, a lot of people that are on food stamps, and speaking from personal experience in more of a white area, yeah, they tend to be a little on the overweight side. And
These are facts.
part of the way they spend food stamps is they use it or lose it. So that means they spend everything they got, and that means they'll fill up their cart. They often had full carts, more stuff in their carts than the average shopper sometimes. So that is a real thing. So I mean, yeah, could the government cut their food stamp benefits and they would survive just fine? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, now this article is very fascinating because we're about to juxtapose this article with a partial read of a different article. So Oliver Anthony's viral hits, not loving his neighbor. But let's look at what Christianity Today or Compromise Today does view as bringing us together. And that is Barbie and Taylor Swift. They are bringing us together. Beyond hot pink and bejeweled outfits, they showcase a deeper desire for community and collective joy.
I mean, can we just?
This is by Beth Felker Jones. This was written yesterday. So the first article was written today. This article was written yesterday.
I mean, let's just divide this in two real quick. Okay, they're doing Barbie because everyone's doing Barbie, so you got to do your Barbie article too.
I've already done my Barbie article.
Yeah, see? And then Taylor Swift. Like, Taylor Swift is like a liberal red flag. It's the guy that's done dating profiles. If you see a girl that references Taylor Swift, you swipe left. You run the other way. Because it's just a liberal buzzword.
Dog whistle, maybe?
It's a dog whistle. I mean, and I guess this is, Beth Felker Jones, saying that she's a rabid liberal, just in even glamorizing Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I mean, it's white liberal girl thing. So we don't have access because we have to create an account, and I don't have an account, and I don't want to be a subscriber to this. I already had to open this up on incognito mode to get the Oliver Anthony article. So this is how the article begins. The epic trifecta of Greta Gerwig's Barbie, Beyonce's Resistance tour, and Taylor Swift's Eras tour, all raking in millions of dollars, are taking over social media. Really? Having grown adult women reliving, not reviling, their youth in a tween girl summer. So I just got to stop right there, like, because maybe it's a Freudian slip. They're reviling their youth, not reliving, or maybe I'm dyslexic. And then tween girl summer, that's because white boy summer, or they got to like take back the summer. I, that have you heard of Beyonce's Renaissance tour?
No, I'm not too familiar on that end.
I've maybe tangentially heard of Taylor Swift's Eras tour, which I've heard has hardly any shows. Like I think I heard she only did like 14 shows in a tour. Not a lot. Or maybe she does 14 shows in a year. Not a lot. And I've heard actually more about Lizzo's tour and how Lizzo's not being is withdrawn and removed from consideration for the Super Bowl halftime show. But we're not talking about 300-pound welfare queens with fudge rounds anymore.
I mean, there's a lot of Lizzos on welfare. Let's just say that.
That is very true. Very true. So, but the enthusiasm and participation are no less among actual young people. Both my 18-year-old son and my 16-year-old daughter, despite never having played with Barbies as children and being on the younger end of the spectrum for Taylor Swift fans, are all in. Really?
Are they all
Your
in on the
18-year-old son's a Taylor Swift fan?
Yay?
I mean, I feel like you failed there. You failed to introduce them to quality music.
Yeah. Also, talking about the Barbie movie, which is also weird.
Like, wasn't there a generation in American history where if you grew up and your parents listened to disco, like, wasn't that like a shame thing? Like, you weren't big into the rock music, you were into disco. Like, there was some sort of shame to that. And as you look back, like, very little disco is remembered. Like, you got Staying Alive, right? You got the song Staying Alive, and that's kind of it. But much of the rock and roll from that era is remembered, obviously. So, same thing here. It's like you got to introduce your kids to good music, and Taylor Swift ain't it. There's a cultural conversation here about the spending power of women and the female dollar, and there's plenty to be said for this. Barbie, Swift, and Beyonce are enormous capital successes. I'm going to read the next sentence and then we'll close out because I can't read any more paragraphs. Barbie and Swift's Eras tours, in particular, opened up dialogue about what Michelle Goldberg at the New York Times calls entertainment that channels female angst, awakening a seismic shift for women in helping women reclaim girlhood without rescinding power. So she reads the New York Times, which just shows you how out of touch she is. And juxtapose that with Oliver Anthony, who's very grassroots, very down to earth. This is where Russell Moore's Christianity or Compromise Today is at.
I really don't understand how Taylor Swift and Beyonce are related to Barbie. Like, what she said might be true of the Barbie movie, is that it's, about, maybe that childhood, like, parody, like, I don't know, like people going to watch Scooby-Doo movies back in the early 2000s that were live action. You get to kind of enjoy the tropiness of Scooby-Doo, but live action, a little bit more comedy, a little bit more adult-centric on some of the edgier humor.
Well, I feel like the business aspect of this is all wrong. The success of Barbie doesn't show the power of the female dollar. It shows the power of a popular brand that's over 50 years old, that's never had a big theatric release like this before.
And the movie also had a lot of free advertisement.
Free advertisement. It paired with the Oppenheimer. It had a star-studded cast, including Michael Cera.
I mean,
She's
literally,
like the least of the stars in it, but
you probably had a month where people were just like, "Yeah, I'm not going to the movies," and even like movies like a Mission Impossible didn't do all that well. So
Mission
there's
Impossible didn't. It went in between Indiana Jones, which no one could have
yeah.
foreseen that flopping as bad as it did.
Oh,
Well, okay, a lot of us did,
when
but not
when you
as bad domestically.
when you need to make $1 billion on a movie, you're setting yourself up to fail. But I mean, you had a lot of people that didn't. They're not seeing Indiana Jones, so if they're going to have their monthly movie budget, Barbie wins. So but I mean, am I shocked it kind of made $1 billion? Sure, but I think a lot of people in the media like heightened the movie, and so that means you had a lot
They
more.
also hid its messaging quite well.
Yes, so you had a lot of people that maybe saw it just to get in on the conversation because it was
Ben
more of a
Shapiro.
yeah, like a water cooler conversation. Again, I don't see that with Beyonce because yeah, people that are Beyonce fans are Beyonce fans. I mean,
But it just shows you the fact that she knows Beyonce's tours just shows you what a bubble she lives in.
I mean, back to Taylor Swift fans being raging
Again, you
liberal.
know the Eras tour. You're aware of all these things that the media tells you are popular. Right? It's like the average person really doesn't care about.
Yeah, but I mean, Taylor Swift's fan base is raging liberal, single, unmarried women, especially those under like millennial or Zoomer. So that age demographics like that's just a growing market. And again, she herself is unmarried, so you know.
So let's get back to the power of the female dollar aspect. I want to actually hammer that some more because, again, Barbie succeeded because it was a brand. Barbie is a huge brand. It is probably the biggest toy brand in the world, other than maybe Hot Wheels, which is also made by Mattel. What's a bigger toy brand than Barbie? So that said, if the female dollar is so powerful, specifically with reference to the box office, well, why aren't big budget movies often marketed to women? Barbie's actually more of a first in how pink it is to have done this well. Mission Impossible, pretty marketed to men. How many of you guys, Fast and Furious 10? That's more male heavy, and it's again as dumb as the Fast and Furious movies are. A lot of them are. Um, they're marketed to men, and they made billions of dollars. What else? Guardians of the Galaxy 3, again, more male slant audience, general appeal. So this isn't a good point because here's the thing about movies. Men will go to movies, and if you can get men to go to movies, that's a success. Men will go to movies and bring their girlfriends or wives with them. With women, it's not as much the other way around. And this isn't a bad thing. Like, I think there's room to have girl movies. I'm not against the idea of a chick flick. I'm more against being made to watch them. And I think that's how a lot of guys feel. So I think they're okay. So someone says Lego is also is the biggest toy brand. Now that is a contender.
Yeah,
Again,
that might
which
have it.
had very successful movies. Very successful movies. So it's not like this can't be done. Let me check the Rumble chat to make sure there's any chat on Rumble. All right. We're all caught up. So these things matter more actually when it comes to the brands and the success of movies in some respects, as long as you don't spend too much money to make the movie. Like, an MCU movie will make like a couple $100 million, but if you spent a couple $100 million to make it, it's not going to make money, and that's Disney's problem. But I don't think Barbie spent that much, but they probably spent well more than that on marketing.
Yeah, I mean,
which they don't report.
I don't see the connection between Barbie and Taylor Swift and Beyonce. It's just
because
they're two of the largest musicians that are basically of the most popular genre, and one of them's had a Super Bowl performance. So that's the most televised event and most televised concert. So the resumes of Taylor Swift and Beyonce as far as their careers. I mean, they're already at the top of their career trajectory. So to compare them to Barbie, which kind of just
But
came out of nowhere and got a billion, isn't I don't think I think it's disingenuous from the start. It's just this person trying to, I guess, rationalize their affection for Taylor Swift or something.
yeah, and that's what it comes off as. And again, this is Russell Moore's Christianity Today, or Compromise Today, as we like to call it. So I'm not surprised that this is the result. But yeah, and if the seismic shift in the female dollar and the power of it was a true phenomenon, then why don't all these female remakes make a whole lot of money? So I'm going to need an answer to that question before I buy into any more of that premise. So that's that's enough out of Compromise Today for now.
Not the worst article. I'll give them that. I mean,
They're trying to go for an economic argument, so you're
I don't know.
maybe more inclined.
I mean, what in the last 30 days they've pushed pro-abortion AIDS.
Okay, so they've had a lot of really bad articles lately.
Yeah, I mean they've obviously Russell Moore going to the gay affirming church.
Now, if you're in the chat, I want your feedback on this question. So Bryson Gray, he's not really the effeminate type, but he's been coming out hard against Oliver Anthony for the language thing. But he also became popular in right-wing circles because of his song Let's Go Brandon. Now, is that hypocritical? The song doesn't have any, objectionable language in it, but it's called Let's Go Brandon, which is a dog whistle for something that is objectionable.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's not even a good song. No, it's not a good song. I actually thought Bryson Gray's Let's Go Brandon song was something else that was more of Christian rap and kind of good, but no, it's a like that. It's so bad. It's bad rap. It sounds the same as any other rap song out there, and I hate it for the same reasons.
Not to throw a bone in the direction of James Lindsay, but when he kind of talked about how it's we're just, I guess the fascination with these, I guess, right-wing songs is kind of like getting a win and using cultural capital to fight back as a protest or whatever, like a postmodern protest. I think that's certainly more true with the rap genre than it is for bluegrass country.
Right. So there are 20 Let's Go Brandon songs. And there was one that was very Christian. It didn't, censor the dog whistling and all that. It didn't censor anything, but it preached the gospel in the third verse in the extended version. I can't remember who did it. I thought it was Bryson Gray who did that, but apparently not.
Brandon McDonald? Or I don't know.
Brandon Tatum?
Yeah, I don't know. But that's the point.
That's someone else that does Christian speaking circuits.
But that's my point. I mean, if you're asking, hey, what music do conservatives more likely listen to? Odds are country is probably on the list. So I think the support for
there are 20 of them, and I tried to look for the one that I thought was Bryson Gray's, and the one that ended up being Bryson Gray's, wow, this is terrible. And I couldn't find the one that I liked. Maybe they got banned from YouTube, but
yeah, that would be the Let's Go Brandon would be a example of people just trying to cash in or get clout and build cultural capital for themselves by doing a protest song, Let's Go Brandon. But you see that a lot more in rap music because you can just come up with rap songs more on the fly. Yes, Bryson Gray does himself, so it's not.
Yeah, because I did an article on Bryson Gray's song about the pride flag or whatever. I forget what it was called, but that song was actually pretty decent.
Take Back the Rainbow or something.
Take Back the Rainbow. That song was decent.
Reclaim the Rainbow.
It didn't do the AAA thing. That's just no. That's why I don't listen to rap music.
And the other thing, Reclaim the Rainbow. And the other thing with Oliver Anthony is that his song, to me, a lot of the best music itself is very unrefined, like a diamond in the rough kind of sound. And when you look at even metal bands in the '80s, they don't sound as polished as they would if they were to produce an album now. But people love their older stuff a lot more than they like their newer stuff. So Metallica sounds very polished with their latest album, 72 Seasons, but it's never going to be as loved as Ride the Lightning and Justice for All, or even Master of Puppets. So they're
But that's how he sounds without any studio interference.
exactly, people like. I mean, I
People like
think
that.
people like the probably the raw, unrefined sound.
And then instead, we're getting astroturfed Cardi B. We're getting told to like Cardi B, who can't perform at her own concert. That's why she threw the microphone and then the music kept on going. So those people got scammed. I mean, they probably should have known they were getting scammed. I've never listened to a rap concert that sounded competently good. Rock concerts, yes. I've listened to rock concerts that don't sound good. I've listened to concerts that do sound good on video. I'm talking about on video. I've never seen
Well,
like
live tracks are actually a thing with rock music. So.
yes, I don't think that's a thing with rap music, and it's also a thing with worship music. So that's a W for contemporary Christian music that mainstream pop culture music doesn't really have. And then every Super Bowl halftime show sounds suspiciously like an album these days. So that is kind of where. So let me know in the chat if you think making a song titled "Let's Go Brandon" is hypocritical, and then to denounce swearing in music. I don't know, because to me it's a dog whistle, and for that reason I think it's a little hypocritical because you're still partaking in the dog whistle, but you're trying to act like you're not. So I don't know. I'll let the chat decide that one. The
And
next topic.
well, I will say with
Go.
the Oliver thing is that it is a pretty much the people that are reacting against it are probably very fine with their standard of living. I imagine they're not the ones struggling to make ends meet. They're probably they probably got richer since the pandemic as far as they're better off. So I do think there's a sense that since they're not struggling, they don't relate to the song, and therefore it's like an elitism within them is that they reject the song. I mean, it goes back to Medieval trying to be like Biggie.
And Meador has been the biggest rejectors of that song, it seems. A lot of people from the TMS crowd, not John MacArthur, but a lot of his bros are in that crowd. So next article that I want to cover is this one: Compassionate Christian Authoritarianism. The leftist utopia the right thinks will save the church.
So is this off the bat calling Christian nationalism Marxism? Is that what
No, it's actually even sadder. The compassionate part only makes authoritarianism more palatable. That's the subheadline. So this was written on the 12th, which was this past Sunday? No, this was this past Saturday. This story made the rounds, and I am late to the game on this story. Like,
where's this one at?
Salon.
Oh.
Yes, why are we talking about an article by Salon like we're like 2018 edgy conservative YouTubers or something? But this song goes after Jake Meador, or Meador. I don't know how you pronounce his name. But Jake Meador is the guy behind Mere Orthodoxy, which is a play on C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity and G.K. Chesterton's Orthodoxy. And it is anything but merely orthodox. It is a very woke publication. And fun fact, so let's actually get into a little history lesson. The term evangelical dark web comes from an article written on Mere Orthodoxy by Brian Alton, who's a Fed, by the way. So there's your fun fact. There's your history lesson. They came up with the term evangelical dark web, and I based my entire brand on the term that they came up with.
Now, I know Jake Meador was the guy doing the global warming debate at Gospel Coalition.
Yes.
So,
and he was wearing sandals and borderline cross-dressing, as AD Robles puts it.
I think it was a scenario where it's just like I saw the debate lineup, I'm like, okay, which one's the liberal, which one's going to be the conservative, the
And
token
you can't
conservative.
tell
No, I think I could tell just by
which one. By physiognomy check.
yeah,
Got it.
Meador was the liberal one.
So if you saw the thumbnail for this live stream, you would have noticed that Jake Meador's head was posted on Homer Simpson's body when Homer Simpson got so fat that he could count it as a disability, and was wearing a Mimu or a Mumu. I think that's what it was called in the episode. It was a Mumu, so he was wearing a giant Mumu, and that is kind of how Jake Meador dresses. So
And it connects very well to the fudge rounds.
it does connect well to the fudge rounds. So let me catch up with. Doesn't C.S. Lewis say compassionate authoritarianism is the worst kind? I do believe that is.
I think it's like the busybody.
Yes, the moral busybody is the worst tyrant. He says something like that because they think they're actually doing good when they do that.
Though I do think there's a difference between like a nanny state versus more of a, I guess, a patriarchal state. As far as,
and then he continues to yell him off. The sadist will get bored of torturing you, but the person who tortures, I think it's torturing you, but the person who tortures you for your own good will never tire. So
yeah, because they're doing it for your own good.
Okay, who watches The Simpsons? Well, I've seen a lot of Simpson episodes in my life.
That's still good Simpsons. That's not like a recent.
That's early Simpsons is pretty solid.
Because I think it's literally making fun of.
Occasionally 90s. Not great, but
I'm pretty sure that episode's
funny.
making fun of welfare reform in the 90s or something. Because Homer gets 300. He gets fat to work.
Yeah, he gets fat to get the accommodations, workplace accommodations.
So it's making fun of the
kind of what Jake Meador looks like, and that's the funny part. So we like to make memes out of people. So this is an article written by the liberal media Salon magazine. John Skiles Skinner is the author, and it is a hit piece on Jake Meador. So last week, the Atlantic published a plan to reverse Christianity's decline in popularity, and this was an article by Jake Meador. So this is a response to another liberal publication where Jake Meador was published in. So Jake Meador, what is his rewards for, working so hard to be published in the liberal media, and it is the liberal media still hates him. And that is kind of the story here. They write a hit piece on Jake Meador, and for what? Not being on their side enough. So Jake Meador's response to this was basically to say that he has enemies on the left and the right, then he must be doing something right. How many times have we heard that from people who have, no principles at all? David French said that he couldn't. David French said that he could not vote for Trump because of Trump's character issues, but David French has embraced every modern heresy. He's embraced every single character flaw, and he had no issue voting for Mitt Romney and John McCain, who had worse characters than Donald Trump. Like, again, that's a hill I'll die on.
No, Joe Biden has a worse character than Donald Trump. That's saying.
Yeah, that's an easy hill to die, or to make the other person die on. That we wouldn't be dying on that hill. Okay. We see some chat about SpongeBob. Well, I got a SpongeBob meme for you later in meme review. I love me some SpongeBob, actually. It is actually like.
Come on, the first couple seasons are solid, man.
Here's the thing about SpongeBob. They did an episode where SpongeBob identifies as a jellyfish. And no one took him seriously. No one accepted him trying to identify as a jellyfish. And the jellyfish did not accept him identifying as a jellyfish. They made that episode way before South Park made, Mr. Garrison's Fancy New Vagina, or whatever that episode's called. I think that's what it's called. They made that way before, people were buying $20,000 dog costumes in Japan. I think SpongeBob is hilarious, and it's extremely based.
An early kids show that didn't have ADHD storylines. So.
Exactly. I mean, you got to appreciate that. Um, so I'm pretty well versed on SpongeBob. Everything's a SpongeBob quote with me. So and including, and I have the meme for this, and I use I used SpongeBob to explain the whole Oliver Anthony thing earlier this week on a video. So anyway, Jake Meador, his response to getting a hit piece written about him is to say that he has enemies on all sides. We've heard this so many times, and it sounds bad each time. It's just a bunch of people with no principles who want to complain about how their takes suck. Like, that's basically what it is. They want to act higher. They want to act like the enlightened centrist, when in reality, the centrist is the person that has no clear morals, because the centrist is socially Marxist and fiscally conservative. Like, you just want to make communism not bankrupt, or you just want to be able to fund degeneracy and not go bankrupt at the same time. So that's basically what the enlightened centrist is, except you're like the most midwit of midwits about it. And that's basically it. I find this to be a fascinating story. The idea that this is someone who wants to be liked by the world, and no matter what, he's still not liked by the world at the end.
Oh, go to Revelation, the beast and the harlot. The beast still hates the harlot, and the harlot representing the false church. So the beast still hates the false church just as much as they hate the real church.
So that's kind of the Jake Meador thing. I didn't think I'd spend a whole lot of time on him, but it is very much very present in the church, that you see people who want to be liked by the world. They want to be published in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Atlantic. In Jake Meador's case, he was published in Atlantic. And yet the world still doesn't accept him. So I just find that to be a very curious example. I think I'm going to 86 the last issue, one of the last things I wanted to talk about, which was an article on American Reformer. And this is by one of those Lutheran gatekeepers that basically says, if there's no room for Jews, then it's not a Christian society. And it's just like such bad logic.
No, I guess you shouldn't share the gospel then.
But I haven't read the article. I haven't, and it's a long article because it's on American Reformer, which is long form essayish kind of content. But let's go back to the whole Jake Meador thing, and maybe let's talk a little bit about the concept of the longhouse, which is kind of this gynocratic rule where, the feelings of communities are prioritized over, merit and strength. This is not the best explanation of the longhouse concept, but gynocracy is another way to put it, which is also something that John Calvin wrote against, was gynocracy. I think he also used the word. So that's what Jake Meador represents in terms of, he is a strict adherent to the gynocracy. Now, with that said, in 2 weeks, so August 31st, we're going to have a live stream with Berean Babes, and we're going to strike a nice, nuanced conversation, because I know she's pretty pumped up about this, about the Allie Beth Stuckey debate, or the idea of what role Christian women can have in the fight to save the church, or even a presence in media. So we're going to have a nice conversation about that. Tom Askell's taking a stance on it as well, because he has Allie Beth Stuckey speaking at his conference coming up. So it's a very interesting debate. We'll get into more of like the Dale Partridge arguments as well. That'll be in 2 weeks. And the funny thing is, I have a nice slate of videos planned because there's just so much going on right now that I'm trying to keep up with it. I've been publishing 3 articles a day lately, and the last couple of days. So, a lot of stuff going on and very busy news cycle. But next week, we're going to definitely talk about the Chosen and Vodi Bakum. I want to get on that story. I want to talk about John MacArthur. He had a interview that he gave. I'm going to listen to it all before I ever get into it. And then we also have a pending story on 9 Marks, and we have a pending story on James Lindsay. So a lot of stuff going on, and then a lot of stuff going on that I'm planning is coming up. And then next Thursday, we're going to do a debate. Or no, we're not going to do a debate. We're going to do a live stream reflecting on the primary debate. And what I want to do for that, because I can't get any guest booked for that, which is an L for me, but I'm going to open it up to be sort of a call-in show for subscribers over at evangelicaldarkweb.org. So that's my plan for that. Make it a little bit more of a call-in. So hope you guys can be there for that. So with that said, let's kind of move on to meme review. And I got a couple of memes, and I want you in the chat to put in a number 1 through 10 to kind of say how good these memes are. These are some memes that I created this week. So don't go easy on me, because I need the tough feedback in order to get better. So number 1 meme on the board. This is the SpongeBob meme. So this is SpongeBob. And then Squidward, you see Squidward. SpongeBob and Squidward are playing down in the sand, enjoying life. I think they're doing la 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 la. And then Squidward's looking out his window, bitter and stuff like that. So the pietists are Squidward, and the Christian nationalists are SpongeBob and Patrick enjoying rich men north of Richmond. This meme got a lot of love on social media. Got to say that. So.
I mean, it's a 10, and it is the story of this song is that, the rank and file, the average Joes on the ground are the ones that are enthusiastic about the song, and then the people in their towers, looking down at them are against it, and they have a negative view of the song. So it is thematically correct.
So you're a fan of the meme. I think the meme's great. That's why I made it. That's why I posted it. And I love SpongeBob memes. Favorite meme templates are SpongeBob templates.
I mean, I wish they were as mad about the rich men north of Richmond as they were about this song.
Exactly. And that's kind of the point that I'm driving home with this meme, is that people are having fun. People are getting famous without going through the proper channels, and that's the reason why people are mad. I 100% think that's a reason. Okay, we got someone saying a 7. Okay. Well, I felt really good about this meme. And then the second one that I made, this one I made last night. This one is Francis Collins when children are getting aborted, and then Francis Collins when children are getting trans, and it's the same smiling portrait of him, and in each instance. So I think this one's appropriately snotty. I do not think this one's as good.
I'll give it a 7 because it is true. I mean, obviously Francis Collins isn't.
I mean, he's a
as
monster.
Relevant, but
again, well, he is relevant this week.
Yeah, this week a little bit, but
and that's why I made
general, it. Yeah, we can't forget the bureaucrats who have screwed us over irreparably. So.
And those are my memes for today. Like this one, I think is not as good as the first one. But anyway, if you have a final question, send it into the chat. This doesn't need to be a 2-hour live stream, I don't think. Send in your final questions. Those are some dank memes for review. I'd like to have gotten more memes than that, but Protestia, David Morrill of Protestia, posted an image of a Christian Post headline written by Kermit Gosnell, and it was like Tim Keller's nuance, or stance on abortion made me comfortable about not judging or something like that. It's very, very good. And Charles says, taking shots at the powers that be is good in my book, 9. And definitely want to punch up. And people are like, he's punching down. And National Review even came out against Oliver Anthony's Richmond, North Richmond, which is the most National Review thing ever. Like, their reviews always suck on movies and anything related to pop culture. It's just kind of expected behavior. So anyway, final question. Okay, here we go. Final questions, get them in. Are you going to watch Conversations That Matter with the Calvinist debate?
No,
Doug
Conversations with Calvinists. That's a different channel.
Conversations with Calvinist debate.
Or with a Calvinist.
Doug Wilson on Millennial. So, okay, so this is talking about Doug Wilson has been challenged by Keith Foskey, right? Who's the guy behind Your Calvinist. He makes excellent videos regarding different denominations and poking fun at different denominations, but always about superior theology because he's Presbyterian. And he's apparently also on Millennial, and he's been doing a lot of joke videos about training for the big debate with Doug Wilson. It's pretty funny material. I need to figure out where that debate is being hosted, and I will definitely be watching that.
Yeah, maybe I'll tune in. Might not be the highest on my tier of list, but
again, I'm not huge on just watching debates and all that, but we will be doing a thing on the Republican debate next week, which is more of a forum than a debate per se, but that'll be fun. But
what's the?
I don't know. I don't even know when this is supposed to take place.
What's the debate? I believe that there will be a millennial reign after Christ returns. I believe the millennial reign ends when Christ returns. Like, what? I don't know. I mean, when it comes down to brass tacks, you're not debating a whole lot, right?
Okay, here's a good one. Are you open to having guest submissions for articles? I do have a thing on the website to submit an article. And I have actually thought about doing like a letter to editor type of thing for Evangelical Dark Web. Because I'm interested in increasing volume, but I'm only one person. So I was actually interested in doing the letters for editor thing. So there's a thing on the website on the contact form, and you can do something like that there. That was an excellent time to ask that question because I've been thinking about that lately. Question: do you see Alex Jones was heaping praise on Blair White, saying he's doing the work of God? Yes, and Alex Jones is probably homosexual.
I mean, I can't say I've seen the exact clip, but that's not it's novel pattern for Alex.
It was Jones. A clip posted by Blair White.
He has a notorious reputation for liking that sort of proclivity.
And I wonder why he's divorced.
Like, if you search his internet history, it probably contains a lot more Blair Whites, if you understand where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I mean, and again, Blair White didn't get cut off down there because it's a fetish, not a mental disease. At least not in his case. Otherwise, he would be uncomfortable with it down there. I mean, at least, Dylan Mulvaney, who passes more than Blair White does. Unpopular opinion, but it's true. At least he went with the bottom surgery. Can we get Alex Jones to host a Republican debate? That'd be funny. Greg Shirk, who previously said he was on Mill, I believe. No rapture, one day, the day of the Lord. Listen to Tim Conway. Yeah, that's closer to what I believe. Like, it's either no rapture, and this might be a more semantic thing, or all the believers come to greet Christ as he returns. But when dispensationalists talk about the rapture, they're talking about passages in which the evil people are whisked away from the earth. Like, it's the meek who inherit the earth. It's God's people who inherit the earth. God's people aren't taken away from the earth. That's, the evil people are taken away from the earth. The reprobate are taken away with the earth. Yellowmouth says, I was about to disagree with your take on Dylan Mulvaney and Blair White, but I threw up instead.
I mean, I just don't have an opinion. I just think they both look
Well, I
rough,
just think having less plastic helps.
you know?
I think that's, and being naturally super scrawny. I think that and less plastic helps. When you look like you're a plastic face and you get DSLs installed, like you stop passing because you already send up the red flags. That signal Adam's apple and stick and berries. You send those red flags way up. So that's the only reason I say that. And he was a theater guy. So it's acting for him. Let's see. I've listened to both sides. I'm open to eschatology, and I am as well. I just don't. I actually find post-mill and dispensational pre-mill to be the least convincing camps. That's just my research on that.
I mean, I just find it funny, Doug Wilson debating mill versus post mill. Just like
he
oftentimes
got memed into the debate by
and
Keith.
and oftentimes those two get lumped together anyway, especially by like the pre-mill Dispy guys. Still like Spencer Smith, those two camps get lumped together all the time.
Spencer Smith is pre-mill Dispy,
isn't he? Because he did the third Adam thing, which was very pre-trip rapture.
I don't get the third Adam thing, but that's just me. I know that Spencer Smith mentioned our channel once, and he followed that. He did a disrespect, and then followed that up by recommending Christianity Today and their material.
And that was over Nefarious.
So I felt, yes, and that was over the Nefarious movie. So he didn't like the fact that we promoted a movie or gave a movie a good review. It's like, really? That's a reason not to listen to thing. And he says, the Element says Third Adam sounds like heresy.
Third Adam is about New Age, so it's actually very good for. It's again not necessarily the best on eschatology, but he does know his own eschatology very well and how it ropes in. But it's about basically New Age, how Catholics and the New Apostolic Reformation are pretty much going to team up together after the rapture. So the false church. So I mean, he's kind of explaining how like a one world government and a rapture church, and I mean, it's about the New Age. Also, it has a lot of good content on. If you ever want to debate
it, Keith Foskey's Baptist. Doesn't he always do the superior theology for Presbyterians in his videos? I assumed he was trying to beef up himself there. Are you telling me he's Baptist? Like what? I thought he was Presby. If I'm wrong about
Third Adam has good evidence if you needed material on like continuationism, like particularly like explaining the spirit, speaking in tongues, things like that. It has a lot of good content on that. So
okay, so
if you have an hour and a half.
I thought based on the videos he was Presbyterian. No, he's just making fun of Presbyterians and their belief that they have superior theology. My bad. I thought he was making fun of himself. Like I knew he's doing that. I just thought he was making fun of himself. I thought that was him making fun of himself. So anyway, I think that's all we have for tonight. Fun live stream. We'll do more of these, and we'll catch you on the next one.